Welcome back to Tell Me More with me, CJ Quartlbaum. Now, normally, this would be a video, but due to some technical issues this week, I got to give it to you in the audio version. Nevertheless, we'll keep going because Tell Me More exists to help bridge the gap in our intergenerational workplace dynamics and build better leaders. And today, I want to talk to you about leadership. Very specifically, understanding your mind to be a better leader. So much of leadership starts from within. Who are you? How do you show up? What has affected you and made you into the person that you are? Most of us have not done the work necessary to truly understand who we are, where some of our thoughts and ideas come from. And a lot of us think that we walk through this life uninfluenced, that we got to where we are sometimes just on our own original thoughts. But there are very few original thoughts left out there. Every leader wants to influence and inspire trust and move people ideally toward a shared vision. Like that is the essence of leadership. It is the gathering and galvanizing of people in a specific direction. And yet, many leaders never stop to ask a simple question: what kind of mind do I have? Now, I understand why, because that's not really a question you walk around asking. And it sounds really abstract. For some of you, you might be listening to this and thinking to yourself, that is an irrelevant question. But consider this: your patterns of thought, how you make sense of the world, how you interpret challenges, how you define yourself directly shape how you lead. If you choose to ignore this inner reality or pretend that it doesn't matter, you run the risk of repeating the same mistakes that have made your leadership fail in the past. See, a lot of us, we're leaders because we have the competency, we have the skill, we have the credentials, we have the connections, but there's a gap in our leadership. We constantly seem to fall short. And that gap is the inner work. It is understanding yourself better because that will help you grow into a leader who not only performs well, but also creates space for others to flourish. What I'm talking about right now is strengthening the soul of your leadership. I'm talking about broadening your aperture and acknowledging that you have a limited perspective. And that if you can acknowledge this truth, you will become the best version of yourself. You will become the leader that you were meant to be, or that you at least hope to be. One mistake that I think a lot of us make is we assume we're normal. We assume that we are normal in the sense that our way of viewing the world, our upbringing, and our experiences are the standard. And anything else is a deviation. The way we do things is normal. The way I was brought up is normal. My country or my people, my culture's values are normal. They are good, right, and true. The reality is, we have a limited perspective that is born from growing up in a bubble with a narrow set of experiences. We all, no matter where we are from, listen, I am from New York City. Okay. I am a Brooklyn boy. Brooklyn by itself would be the fourth largest city in this country. And yet, I recognize that I grew up in a bubble because New York is its own kind of bubble. Sure, I was exposed to all different kinds of peoples and thoughts and ways of doing things, but that doesn't mean my perspective isn't limited. A part of growth is recognizing that the narrow sliver in which we grew up, I don't care if my city has 8 million people. There are 8 billion on the planet. 99% of the world is from somewhere else and sees the world differently and does things differently. Recognizing that whatever I consider to be normal is merely one very small subset of the pie means that I recognize I have limits. And if you can do the same thing, Embrace this concept that, yes, I have a limited perspective born from a particular time and place with a particular group of people. If you can embrace this and you can seek what you don't know, it'll make you into a much better leader. Like, I want you to think about the last time you faced resistance from your team. Did you get defensive, double down on your position, or did you open the floor and ask questions? Did you maybe perhaps rethink your assumptions? See, I once worked for this leader who did everything he could to surround himself by yes. If you had an opinion or a thought or an idea that was contrary to what he liked and what he believed to be good, right, and true, there was no debate. There was no real conversation. He would always, in very short and pithy ways, shut you down and then exclude you from the conversation. So while you may have been in meeting A, you surely didn't make it to meeting B. That is a narrow perspective. See, the difference here isn't just personality. It's not like, oh, some of us get more defensive than others. This actually comes from deep mental structures. It comes from a place of formation, from how we've been brought up, from how we've been told we are to operate in this world. And sometimes it's how we learn to survive in this world. I like to assume the best about people, or at least I try to. And I think for this leader, knowing what I know about his background and upbringing, the only way to survive was to shut people down. It was to be the authority in the room and to go unchallenged. And that's unfortunate for him. It's unfortunate for his family. It's unfortunate for all of those who worked with him and currently still do. But what I love is that adult development research has been growing over the last few years, right? So you have pedagogy, which is the way that children learn, but then there's andragogy, the way that adults learn. And I think we don't often give enough consideration to how adults learn. But there's a whole growing field of science centered around neuroplasticity and adult development. And you've seen some really great books come out about this, like Growth by Carol Dweck, which is one of the seminal pieces of my work, one of those foundational books, because there's this growing recognition that our minds are not static, that we can continue to grow and develop for as long as we live if we choose to. The old adage that you can't teach an old dog new tricks is a lie. But that dog has got to want to learn. That dog has to have the desire, the willingness, and the ability. And yes, learning gets harder as we get older, but it is not impossible. You know, a recent McKinsey study described three primary forms that adults operate from. And that's going to be the bulk of where we spend the rest of our time. There is the socialized mind, the self-authored mind, and the self-transforming mind. Knowing which kind of mind you are operating from and you lean on is going to reveal the type of leader that you are. It'll explain why you thrive in some contexts and struggle in others. And most importantly, it shows where your next area of growth is. Understand your mind, and you will get to the places that you want to be. You'll be able to overcome the barriers that have held you down. Leadership growth, I think it doesn't start with like techniques or tactics. It starts from the inside out. My coaching, when I coach leaders, and if you want to be coached, please hit me up. I have a website. You can hit me on Instagram, DM me, whatever. Let's connect. But when I coach leaders, I start with the inner work because ultimately the problem isn't out there. It's not your subordinates. It's not whoever's not doing what you want them to do. The growth for a leader, maturation for a leader, it starts from within. So let's talk about these three types of mind. First, you have the socialized mind. For the socialized mind, it's exactly what it sounds like. You were brought up in a certain way, you were trained in a certain way, developed in a certain way. You were socialized in a certain way. This is about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that belonging. And so the expectations of others deeply shapes the socialized mind because you want to fit in, you want to be in the group. So your sense of right and wrong, success and failure often comes from external sources: bosses, parents, peers, cultural expectations, the institutions that you are a part of. They socialize you in a specific way, and consciously or subconsciously, you want to remain a part of the group. When I coach Gen Zers, in particular, I have a group of South Asian Gen Zers that I coach, and for so many of them, they so desperately want to pursue something else in life, but they're unable to because socially they have been told they have to be doctors, and their sense of belonging has given them a lack of vocational imagination where they don't know what else they can do or be, because to choose something else means they're sent out of the group. Now, people who operate from a socialized mind, they're often really good team players because, again, there's that wanting to belong. They're loyal and they're dependable, and they're willing to align themselves with a cause. But the danger's clear. When everyone's opinion matters, it's difficult to stand apart. In the same way that I'm trying to coach my South Asian Gen Zers that, hey, you can make a decision for yourself. It's hard to do that. It's hard to be the one who stands out. It's hard to be the one who says, I'm going to go against the grain. I'm going to choose to live in a way that is different from the group. And so if you're a leader operating from this mind, your decisions are really cautious. You're afraid to make a mistake. You don't want to rock the boat too much. You're leading to please rather than to transform. And there's an appropriate time and place to lead to please, but also there's time where the call is for transformational leadership. And if you're operating from a socialized mind, you can't get there. Leaders operating from this socialized mind, they're classic people pleasers. Their fear of offending keeps them from being courageous. See, it's that leader operating from the socialized mind who may not stand up for their subordinates when someone else is attacking them. See, they don't want to disappoint the person above them, or maybe even disappoint one of their peers. Another danger that the socialized leader has to deal with is that they don't want to appear incompetent in front of the group, which means that if you push back on their ideas, they get defensive. Because if they give an idea and you critique it in any way, then you're almost challenging their sense of belonging in that moment. Maslow was right. We desire to belong, and any threat to that status is anathema. It's the reason why teenagers act the way they do. That it's at that time in life where that sense of belonging, that desire to belong, it kind of sits at its deepest. And so they have a really hard time standing out. And if you know anything about my beliefs, we never really leave high school. It just morphs and transforms and looks a little different throughout life. That second kind of mind is the self-authored mind. At this stage, leaders they start to develop their own internal compass. It's not that they don't want to belong to the group. They just stop outsourcing their values and beliefs to others. They begin to author their own story. They can stand apart and say, this is what I think and what I believe. And this is why I think and believe this. They start to operate with a little more conviction. It's not about not caring what other people think, but it's more about leading with purpose and clarity. It's leading from a place where it says, no, I know who I am and I know what I'm about and I know what I believe and I have my guiding principles. And sometimes those principles cause me to go against the group, but right or wrong, I know where I'm going. Leaders with a self-authored mind, they can stand apart from the crowd because their decisions are being made on principle and not popularity. They can listen to conflicting perspectives and not lose who they are. They're not swayed by every good sounding idea that comes. They're not leaves being blown in the wind. These leaders, they know who they are and what they believe. But of course, the limitations are clear. It's rigidity, right? If your entire identity rests on being self-authored. I'm the innovative one. I'm the ethical one. I'm the tough one. The challenge is that those values still create blind spots because you're so convicted and you're so sure and you're so purposeful that you're viewing the world through a very specific lens that you miss what's happening around you. And just like with the socialized type of leader, when people start to challenge those values, they can feel like an attack. The self authored mind can fall into the trap of thinking their perspective is the right perspective. And I get it. We don't land on our convictions at random, right? You didn't just wake up and say, oh, I believe this now. I believe this is the best model and form of leadership. The self authored leader, they're thoughtful and they're rational, but they miss that their ideas are a way and not the way. Where I've seen this show up in my career is working with leaders where our goal is to build some sort of program, and the leaders will convene. They'll convene a room full of people and they'll say, hey, we're all here to work on this thing. We are going to bring this project to life, to fruition. I want to hear all of the ideas, but here's where I think it needs to go. Here's what I think that it should look like. And those leaders, they'll hear challenges. They will hear conflicting ideas. And ultimately, the project looks exactly like what they wanted it to look like. These leaders will tend to surround themselves with yes men and yes women because they have come with a vision and they've come with a plan. And they might tell you they're being collaborative in this moment. But in the end, when you look at the final result, it's exactly what they want. The third type of leader is the self transforming mind. Very few people reach this stage, but those who do exhibit a special type of leadership. The self transforming mind recognizes that even your self authored mind, your ability to think for yourself and stand apart from the crowd, they recognize that it is not final. The self transforming mind, they view beliefs and values as evolving and not fixed. This mind is the ultimate growth mindset. And on the surface, it might sound like, oh, well, this mind has no center. This mind, maybe it is swayed a little bit, but that's not true. The self transforming mind has values. It might have some values that they hold with a closed fist, but every value is not held with a closed fist. Every way of doing things is not held with a closed fist. The self transforming mind will recognize that even if I think my way is the best way and I'm standing on conviction on this, the self transforming mind recognizes that your way is also valuable. And I might have something to learn from you. Leaders at this stage, they hold paradoxes without collapsing into confusion. They possess what is called cognitive flexibility to recognize that two things can be true. And so they're less interested in protecting their personal story and more open to being changed by reality instead of clinging to certainty, clinging to what they know to be true. The self transforming leader can embrace complexity and ambiguity and change. They recognize that there are going to be different seasons that call for different forms of leadership, and they are willing to step up to that challenge. The self transforming leader, they don't allow their feelings to get in the way of facts. Leaders operating from a self transformed mind can consider alternative ideas and perspectives, ultimately selecting the best one. Now, I think a great example of this may not necessarily be in one particular leader, but I often think of the San Antonio Spurs. They led the way for what this can look like from an organizational standpoint. The San Antonio Spurs were the first team in the NBA to bring different voices into their basketball operations. For years, for decades, basketball front offices were populated by people who played in the NBA. So it was populated by a bunch of veterans, basketball lifers, people who played in the NBA and worked their way up through systems. But the San Antonio Spurs were the first ones to say, we're going to hire non basketball people into basketball roles So we're going to hire statisticians and psychologists and journalists, people who had a depth of experience in other areas and a vantage point that people who only had basketball experience would not have. And do you know what this did? It transformed, it revolutionized the San Antonio Spurs organization. It contributed to the 5 NBA championships that they won because they brought opinions and ideas that transformed the organization from the inside out. See, this is a picture of the transformed mind at scale. It's flexible enough to evolve, strong enough to hold diversity, but humble enough to keep learning continuously. Now, if I'm honest, this is a bit of a sore spot for me. In my career, I have often been the outsider. My career has not been this straight line path. I have a bunch of experience in a bunch of different areas, and I would walk into somewhere new with these lifers who have only ever worked in these industries or these particular fields. And I would say, hey, I'm seeing this from the other side, or I'm seeing this from a different angle. And most of the time, people just didn't get it. They would tell me I didn't have enough experience or the right experience, or I wasn't trained in this particular area, or I don't know this well enough. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here saying, no, 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 no. I see this clearly. I see it well for the exact reason that you don't. But that's life. This self transforming mind, this ability to hold multiple viewpoints and see things from a different perspective is not for everyone. I had a period in my life where I spent 5 straight years looking for jobs, again, with this very diverse experience, and I cannot tell you the amount of jobs that I made it to the final round for, only to be told my experience is too broad, and to quote, because this was the line I heard all the time, "We just went with the person who has a more narrow set of experiences." But I think the future is in this diversity. The future is in leadership being self-transforming, that as things change and people management becomes even more important, you are going to need the ability hold multiple thoughts, to hear different perspectives, and not be so caught up on yourself and your way of doing things. Skeptical leaders are listening to this right now, if they're still here, and they're thinking, I don't need philosophy, CJ. I need results. But here's the truth. Your track record already shows how your mind operates. If you see recurring conflicts and defensive reactions or breakdowns in trust, those aren't just personality traits. They are signals of the mind you're leading. If every team that you lead is constantly quarreling and infighting, if every idea is a direct reflection of what you want, it's telling us something. If you never experience disagreement or pushback, chances are not only are you not leading from a transformed place, but your rooms, your boardrooms, and your meetings are not places that are psychologically safe enough for people to offer you real challenges. And ignoring this won't make your deficiencies disappear. Facing them is the first step to grow. See, I think that when leaders commit to this level of inner work, this is not fun. All right. It's not easy to like start digging in yourself and figuring out how you were socialized and how you were raised and how it affects you now. But when you do it, the outward benefits are palpable. You feel it. Your team feels it. Your family feels it. Your friends feel it. Because how you do anything is how you do everything. And if this is how you're showing up at work, chances are it's how you're showing up in your friendships and in your other relationships. Your leadership will improve because you're not stuck in these automatic patterns. You're not stuck falling victim to the Einstein effect, where you think that there's only a singular way to solve problems because it's the only way you've ever solved problems. Your team dynamics improve because you're modeling growth and not defensiveness. You're creating a place where people are psychologically safe to voice their concerns and take risks and be able to fail without worry of reprisal. See, this isn't about becoming a perfect leader. I don't think those exist. But I do think you can be the best version of yourself. You can be a leader who is adaptive and self aware and trustworthy. A leader that people rush to follow. A leader that people want to emulate. So now you might be wondering, All right, CJ, where do I start? I got four practices for you. The first is to take time for reflection. Take some time to really sit and ask yourself some hard questions. What drives my reactions? Whose approval am I seeking? Where do I feel myself getting the most defensive? These questions will help uncover whether you're operating from a socialized mind, a self authored mind, or a self transforming mind. The second thing I want you to do is I want you to get some tools, and I want you to use the tools wisely. Personality assessments like Working Genius and DISC and Enneagram and the Myers Briggs, none of them are perfect, but they're helpful mirrors. Look not at the labels per se, but look at the patterns. When several tools point to the same tendencies, pay attention. Every personality profile test I take says the same thing. CJ wants to read books and be left alone, and he really cares about people. Okay, these tools are not everything, but they give us really good insight into ourselves and into what makes us tick. I know that I work best alone, which means a growth area for me as this person who wants to be left alone is learning to play well with others, to work better on a team. Now, my caution for you in this is it's easy to get lost in the assessment trap. It's easy to wear the results like a badge and your entire identity, but don't do that. Third thing is seek feedback. While I love tools and I love the personality assessments, nothing beats the people who know you and know you well. So I want you to invite trusted colleagues and friends and family to tell you about you. Give them the space to do that. Ask them, how do I show up? What does my presence do to the rooms that I am in? And as you're hearing it, notice where your identity feels threatened. And then do the really hard thing and lean into curiosity instead of defensiveness. Goes back to that first one of asking good questions, asking why. Last thing I want you to do is I want you to stretch into discomfort. Growth does not happen in your comfort zone. Embrace the learning edge. Try leading in ways that challenge your current way of thinking. So if you're a socialized leader, that might mean taking an unpopular but principled stand. If you're a self authored leader, it might mean letting go of control and experimenting, letting other people's ideas lead the way. And if you're a self transforming leader, it might mean slowing down and letting others lead. So, that McKinsey article that I referenced earlier has a great line in it. It says, "The trap for leaders is believing that who they are is fixed. In reality, growth comes when leaders hold their identities more lightly and step into who they might become." Adult development theory shows us that these forms of mind are not rigid categories, but they are developmental possibilities for us. You are not locked in. It is not too late for you. Wherever you are, wherever you're sitting right now, I don't care if you're 18 or 85, you can grow. Practice, feedback, humility. You can grow. Pride and ego is what keeps us from reaching this place. Thinking we're a final product, thinking that we have it all together. Listen, understanding your mind is not soft work. All right. It is the hardest, most consequential work you can do as a leader. And now you might try to patch this up with techniques and strategies, and they might solve some short-term problems, moving people around on a team, but only the inner work will bring long-term transformation. So my invitation to you is simple. Take stock of your mind. Notice your patterns, challenge your defensiveness and your assumptions, expand your identity. And as you do, your leadership will deepen, your team will strengthen, and your organization will thrive. And you might be listening to this and thinking to yourself, yeah, CJ, I've heard it all before, but I just don't believe you. Listen, you might be right. I could be absolutely wrong. Because what do I know? I'm just some guy from Brooklyn.